The Boston Celtics have a major trade piece ahead of this trade deadline, and no, it is not a player, but it is a traded player exception that they received last offseason. Last year, the Boston Celtics let go of Grant Williams for a traded player exception worth $6.25 million and 2 second-round picks. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down some potential guys that the Celtics could go after using that traded player exception from last offseason. All of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz. But before we dive into this Boston Celtics content, I would like to say that roughly 79% of our viewers are not subscribed. I would greatly appreciate it if you guys hit that big old red subscribe button and join the Celtics Digest family. We recently just hit 3,000 subscribers. We want to get to our new goal of 4,000, so if you want to make sure you stay up to date on daily Boston Celtics content, hit that subscribe button as you definitely will not regret it. But let's dive into the news at hand today. Make sure to grab a snack, as today's episode is going to be a jam-packed one. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at 3 more potential trade targets for the Boston Celtics to be looking at ahead of the trade deadline happening this Thursday. Now, like I mentioned, the most likelihood of a Boston Celtics trade happening is with the Grant Williams traded player exception that the Boston Celtics received last offseason. Now, the Celtics have other contracts that they're able to move, but they're very, very small at the $2 million rank with guys like Svi Mykhailiuk, Lamar Stevens, and Dalano Banton. And not a lot of teams want those guys because, like for the Boston Celtics, they don't really play that much. And for those teams, if they were even to be on a young rebuilding team, they'd be kind of end of the rosters. They're not that, young and hyped up young stars. But also, if they were on a contending team, they wouldn't be getting that much limelight either, just because they're not the best players on a contending team. So therefore, these guys are kind of just stuck on this Boston Celtics roster, being those help as injury guys and having to show up when their number is called. But with the Boston Celtics not being able to trade any of those guys, and obviously having a lot of their money tied up in Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Al Horford, Derrick White, Kristaps Porzingis, and Jrue Holiday, the Celtics kind of have no contracts to be tradable. The only contract that can kind of be tradable is the Payton Pritchard contract, and that has a poison pill activation, which means that if the Boston Celtics were to trade said contract, it would go up in price for the team receiving it, and the Boston Celtics would be taking less in return. Therefore, it is a little bit of a disaster to kind of work with a poison pill contract and getting a deal done with it. So the Boston Celtics, if they are to move off of Payton Pritchard, would most likely look to do it next offseason. So like I mentioned, the only really tradable piece is the traded player exception, which you can bring in either one player or multiple players that equal that $6.25 million. And the Celtics can attach multiple second-round picks or even a first-round pick if they want from their draft stock this year that they could go off to get a said player. Said player comes into the salary free of charge, no adding to the tax. They come in, the TPE is already valued for the Boston Celtics, and then said player would be able to continue their run with the Celtics, push for a championship, and possibly even re-sign next year. So let's look at the 3 potential guys that could be making their way to Boston. The first one is Simone Fontecchio. Now, Simone Fontecchio plays for the Utah Jazz and is a solid small forward / power forward for them. Honestly, the most run that I saw from Simone Fontecchio was from when Lauri Markkanen went down. He played a little bit of a stretch 4 for them, and he actually looked like a solid wing piece for them. He's had some great lineups as well with Lauri Markkanen and John Collins, also playing with Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, fitting in at that 3-4 role and being, a solid shooter for this Utah Jazz team. If we want to look at his stats, 9 total points, 3.5 total rebounds, and 1.4 assists off of 45% shooting, which is up from his career at 41%, and 39% three-point shooting compared up from his 36% last year with 80% free throw shooting. So Simone Fontecchio kind of finding his rhythm with his shot for the Utah Jazz this season and actually looking like a nice piece. He is a restricted free agent, so if the Boston Celtics were to go after him and acquire him, they could match his deal if someone were to offer him anything outrageous in the summer, or the Boston Celtics go after this guy, kind of bring him in to help out with Sam Hauser in that role. I know a lot of Celtics fans like myself really like Sam Hauser as he's grown to be this, solid wing for the Boston Celtics, but some people in the comments and some people in the Boston community aren't really that sold on Sam Hauser yet, so maybe a guy like Simone Fontecchio, who has a little bit of that veteran experience at around 28 years old and already, having the NBA limelight underneath him, maybe you feel a little bit more confident with an NBA-ready guy at that position in Simone Fontecchio, kind of helping out and playing a similar role with Sam Hauser at that 3-4 position. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about Simone. I don't mind him. I think he could be a big help to the Celtics, but like I just mentioned, I think Sam Hauser is already a guy in Simone that are very similar, and I think we already have that type of role player on our team. The next guy that we're going to be looking at is Reggie Bullock. Now, this is kind of ironic, as the Celtics could have actually acquired Reggie Bullock last year in that Grant Williams deal. If you guys do not know, the Celtics did not want to take a contract back for Grant Williams. The whole reason they took the traded player exception was to give them some flexibility at the deadline. If there was a guy underperforming or a guy on a cheap contract that needed some more playing time or was ready for a championship roster, the Celtics could go out and acquire him instead of having to just take whoever was on from the Dallas Mavericks contract. Therefore, a 3-team deal had to be formed to get this Grant Williams deal done. Reggie Bullock was sent to San Antonio, immediately waived, and then the Boston Celtics were interested in bringing him back after he got waived. Wanted to bring him on a cheaper deal. Didn't really like Reggie Bullock at that $11 to $12 million. Unfortunately for the Boston Celtics, he went to the Houston Rockets, where former Boston head coach Ime Udoka was, and he hasn't really gotten that much run over there in Houston. If we want to look at his stats, you guys can see this season: 20 games played, 2.4 points, 1.4 rebounds, 0.5 assists. Shooting numbers are down 40% from the field, 38% from 3, and 100% from the free throw range. Now, my honest opinion on Reggie Bullock is I think he's a solid wing defender, and I think he'd be a very nice piece. But honestly, do I really think he has a role for the Celtics team? I don't know. I think he can kind of be what Oshae, Brissett, and Lamar Stevens already are for this Boston Celtics team, and they already are on $1 million and $2 million deals. So I don't see the necessary fit for going after another wing playing that similar role at the same amount of money when we already have two guys that play that role on this roster. Now, I think Reggie Bullock, kind of deserves to be on a championship contending team. This Rockets team that he's on has a bunch of young wings. We can talk about Jabari Smith, we can talk about Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, Jalen Brooks they just re-signed. So this team doesn't have any room for Reggie Bullock, clearly showing in his point per averages as he barely plays 20 points and 2.4 points. Therefore, I do think Reggie Bullock needs to find a home to be a veteran guy to, kind of help on that championship roster. You can be an 8th, 9th, 10th man, just being a solid wing defender and, maybe stretching out and hitting the 3 at a time. Do I think the fit could be nice? Yes, but honestly, I think the Celtics, like I mentioned in the first trade, already have a similar player in Reggie Bullock on this roster. And lastly, the next guy we're going to be talking about is Otto Porter Jr., who's had a little bit of a lackluster career ever since he won that chip with Golden State versus the Boston Celtics and having a big integral role with that team. Went down with an injury with the Toronto Raptors last season, and this season, ever since he's been back, hasn't really gotten that much playing time working back from that injury, with the Raptors also having a logjam of forwards and also kind of figure out what direction they want to go in as well, dealing Pascal Siakam, dealing OG Anunoby. Some of these veteran guys like Otto Porter, Thaddeus Young are definitely going to be looked to be on the move, and the Celtics could be a home for Otto Porter. If we want to look at his stats: 2.6 points, 1.9 total rebounds, 0.5 assists, 42% shooting, and 35% shooting from 3. Those numbers have drastically gone down for Otto Porter, but honestly, his injury history has kind of made him less likely available. This guy, I don't mind Otto Porter. I think, like I mentioned, like Reggie Bullock, I think he could be a solid wing defender for the Celtics team playing that 3-4 position. He's lost a little bit of a step with his injury history, but I still think he could be a decent piece for the Boston Celtics. Do I think the Celtics will go after and throw all their trade chips to go at a guy Otto Porter? No, I don't think so. Just because his injury history is a little bit up there, I don't know if he'd be a best fit for the Boston Celtics. In order, I would rank Simone Fontecchio as the best option, and I would say Otto Porter is the worst, with Reggie Bullock being in the middle. I think all of these options could help out the Boston Celtics, but ultimately, I don't think they're the key position help that the Boston Celtics need. Do I think that Simone Fontecchio, Reggie Bullock, and Otto Porter Jr. could bring some life to the Celtics bench? For sure, and we desperately need to see that. But with Otto Porter having a little bit of injury history, Reggie Bullock not really looking the same ever since being the buyout, I don't really realistically know if I want those guys. Simone, let's see how I feel about him watching some Utah Jazz games, and then we'll talk about it. But let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Out of these 3 guys, who would you like the Boston Celtics to get? And if none of these 3 guys really entertain you, let me know in the comment section who you want the Boston Celtics to utilize for that Grant Williams traded player exception. We saw Brad Stevens last season use it on a guy in Mike Muscala, a low-end contract who didn't really realistically help out this Boston Celtics team late into the playoffs. So we could see another move like that as well, maybe possibly a John Conchar or something like that. Got to keep your eyes open with Brad Stevens. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Velez, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.